We teach other people how to treat us, and the way that we do that is they observe how we treat ourselves. So if we are speaking to ourselves, treating ourselves badly, other people have been given permission, not blatant, obvious permission, but they are being given permission to do the same thing back to us. So if I wanted other people to love me, to treat me kindly, to speak to me kindly, to be respectful and all of that, I needed to start speaking kindly, respectfully, lovingly towards myself and believe that I deserved it.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Hello and welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast. This is Coach Strick, and on today's episode, we are going on a journey. Today's guest, Leslie Davis, has real-world experience in losing weight and, more importantly, in learning to love herself. Her book, You Cant Eat Love, describes her journey from being an overweight 59-year-old and not being able to love herself to losing nearly 100 pounds and finding her why. Weight loss can be difficult, and as Leslie says, when you hit a traffic jam in life, don't park your car, don't get out, don't walk home. So buckle up. And let's hear what Leslie has to say about discovering your very best friend in the whole wide world. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, Sean, I am so excited to be here. I have been looking forward to talking to you all day long. I've been listening to your podcast, and you are so spot on with your message. It is about so much more than counting calories. But you know what I really like? I like how you're honest with your listeners about your struggles and how you ended up where you are, and that you decided to do all this background work so that you could become an expert, so that you could really go out and help people to understand it's not just about counting calories. And the guests that you bring on, oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on, but I am so excited to talk to you. And thank you so much for letting me do this.
Well, I only let certain people on my show.
Well, I appreciate being one of them.
Because and it's been difficult to find people that are in line with my view, and because the traditional, conventional way of going about weight loss is most people ultimately it just comes down to calories in, calories out. And they may admit to some of these other things mattering, or, it matters that how you think, and it matters, if you have emotional issues, and they'll admit these things, but ultimately their plan comes down to calories in, calories out. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on the show, Leslie, is because I found your book on Amazon, and it's titled You Cant Eat Love. And so when I saw the title, You Cant Eat Love, I knew that you knew exactly what I was talking about when I'm talking about it's more than, calories in, calories out. And so could you tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, like so many people, first of all, thank you so much for finding the book, buying the book, and reading the book. I really, really appreciate it. But, like so many people, I hit a point in my life where I realized I could either keep going in the direction I was going, or I could do something different. And I made a decision at that point in time, and I actually have a real life stake in the ground out in my backyard where I said, I'm going a different direction. And I decided to get healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. So where I started was with my weight. And I recognized, oh my gosh, stepping on the scale that first time, I had about 100 pounds to lose. And I thought that I was starting at the easy place, which was my weight. But as you discovered, and as you preach and you teach, it's not about the calories in and the calories out. What I came to recognize as I started tracking my food is it was about so much more than the food that I was eating. And I came to understand that I had what I call a myself-sized hole in my heart that I had been trying to fill with food because I believed that nobody loved me. And what I discovered is the only person who didn't love me was me. So as I started doing the work of feeling, I know it sounds crazy, but as I started doing the work of naming the emotions, experiencing the emotions, and not running from the emotions, the power that food had over me started being released and eased up. So it very much is not just about calories in, calories out, because for me, and I've discovered this as I talk to other people who struggle with emotional eating, when we try and control that which is controlling us, it simply gains power. So trying to control the calories in and calories out, it became a fight. And I could gamify the situation because I'm really smart and I could figure that out. But once I started embracing my emotions and my feelings and accepting and feeling and all of that stuff, the food began to lose its power. And as a consequence, I was able to lose almost 100 pounds. But not only that, but I've kept it off since 2017.
Yeah, fantastic. I love this little saying that you came up with. This, you were feeling the myself-sized hole in your heart.
Right.
And I strongly believe that this is what a lot of people are doing when it comes to food and when it comes to other addictions, like whatever it is, alcohol, gambling. It's just we're looking for something external from ourselves.
And that was the realization that I had, is I was looking for something from the outside to fill something on the inside, when truth was all I needed was something on the inside. And once I discovered I could love myself, and I talk about it in the book, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror and say, I love you, without crying. I hated to see my shadow. I hated to see a reflection in the windows. And it wasn't until I started feeling and expressing that the power started being released. And I had a counselor read the book before it was published. And she said, this could be called You Can't Drug Love, You Can't Drink Love, You Can't whatever your addiction is, love.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a very important, subject. And I would like to also say it's a very scary subject. It's because it's a lot easier to eat than face your demons, like face those feelings that are inside, whether they're coming from, mother, father, an environment, a situation. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. There's feelings there, and a lot of times we try to hide from them, or distract ourselves. That's another thing, like distracting ourselves with food or with social media or whatever it is. Can you talk a little bit more about the feeling part of it and what you kind of specifically did to kind of overcome or face those scary feelings head on?
Well, what I discovered, because I don't know about you, but I grew up in a family where you were told that you shouldn't feel certain things. And so that creates tension. So what I started doing is I started writing, and I would just have written conversations with myself about how I was feeling and what I was feeling. And that surprisingly started easing up the tension. And I did it accidentally because I recognized a couple of times that I had overeaten. And I was like, okay, so what was going on? You had a plan, what happened? And I would start writing, just scribbling in my tracker, what I was feeling. And I was like, okay, I don't have enough room in this thing. I need to move to a piece of paper. So I got little notebooks, not big notebooks, but small notebooks, and started writing how I was feeling, why I was feeling it. And what I started discovering is a lot of my feelings were tied to events in my past that I had never dealt with. Because I didn't know how to deal with them, or the people around me told me, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or they weren't listening to whatever it was. So as I started moving forward, what I started recognizing is two very important things. Number one, I am only in control of me. I'm not in control of anyone else. Number two, the things that I want, even if I were to ask someone else for them, they would disappoint me. So who did I need to get those from? And that's where I came up with my very best friend in the whole wide world, which is me. Because truthfully, who is it that's always available at 2 o'clock in the morning, doesn't care if you're hoeing the same row for the 2000th time about how crazy your mother-in-law makes you, or can you believe that your husband or wife said XYZ for the 90 millionth time? Your very best friend in the whole wide world, and that's me. And as I started writing, and I still do this every day, I had conversations with myself back and forth, and I started adding in phrases like, well, of course you feel that way. Why wouldn't you feel that way? This is what's going on. And I started feeling heard and seen. And I recognized that I was getting that from myself. And as a consequence, I stopped searching for it from someplace else outside of me, which you talked about, the external factors.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like, in a way, the way you explained it right there, it kind of sounds like by journaling, you're kind of in a way able to step back from the picture, like you can't see, if you're in the picture, you can't see what's in there. You got to step back from, to kind of see the situation. And then when you're able to step back from the situation while you're journaling, you can say, well, of course I felt this way because XYZ, and who wouldn't feel that way, type of situation.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And I tell people sometimes, it's not that the people that we grew up with or that we are surrounded by, it's not that they are broken. Okay, they may not be as informed as us enlightened people are, but again, we circle back to we can only do something about us. But if we grow up in an environment that's not emotionally healthy, well, then we're set up with certain limitations and beliefs, right? And we perform in a certain way. So I tell people, oftentimes it's like, I think you're wearing a gray shirt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were to come into the room and you were to say to me, and I'm an emotionally unhealthy person, you were to say to me, don't you like my gray shirt? And I would say to you, your shirt is purple, it's not gray. And you say, no, it's gray. Well, if I'm somebody that you know, like, and trust, you're going to start believing that your shirt is purple because I've told you this, right? So then you go off to a land where there are people who are emotionally healthy, and you walk up to them and you say, don't you like my purple shirt? And they say, wait a minute, your shirt is gray. And you're like, hold on. My whole world just flipped. What do you mean? So the thing that I want people to understand is when we are dealing with emotional issues, especially when it comes to food or anything else, tension is set up if we do not address the things that are driving us, the emotions. If we try and squash them down, they come out sideways. Picture a s'more. That melted marshmallow going into that thing, you squash it down, it goes out everywhere, right? So it really, as you talk about all the time, it's not about the calories in and calories out. Is that important? Is that relevant? Yes, but it is not the be all to end all. It's not the alpha or the omega. It's simply information.
That's funny you should say that, because my next podcast that's coming out is about weight loss tools. And they're like more traditional tools, but that was the whole like point of the podcast, was like, it's just information. It's just data that we can utilize to help inform our decisions, how to do what we, need to do to lose weight. Right. So your book, You Cant Eat Love, it was a unique way you went about writing this book, and you wrote it in a way of like a journey. You described this journey of getting in your car and going on this journey from where you were to where you want to be. And you talk about traffic jams, and you talk about getting out of the car and walking home, and you talk about all kinds of things. Can you tell us a little bit about this journey that you described in your book?
Well, as you know, when we are starting to shift our thought patterns and things like that, it's not a destination. Okay, for example, where was the last trip you went on?
Florida.
Florida. Okay. So when you arrived in Florida, did you turn around and go back home?
No.
No. So you see, it's not about the destination. And that's what I came to really understand. It's not about the destination. It's not about getting to X number of pounds on the scale. It's not about fitting into a certain size of clothes. It's about what happens after you arrive at the destination, right? So when you went to Florida, there was stuff that happened after you arrived. True?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't turn around and get back on the plane and go home. No. So I started realizing that as I was going on this journey of changing a lot of my beliefs, my thoughts, thought patterns, my way of speaking to myself, how I ate, what I ate, how I exercised, what exercise I did, it was not about arriving at some place. And so people would say to me, how do you keep doing this? Because over the 21 months it took me to lose the weight, I only had time where I went backwards, and that was okay. But I had people all the time saying, I can't do this. And I said, okay. And they would say, I'm going to quit. And I would ask them, I said, okay, I live right south of I-10, known as the Katy Freeway in my area. I said, when you get on the Katy Freeway and you hit a traffic jam, what do? And they would say, well, I sit there, I wait for it to clear, and then I keep on going. I said, right. You do not get out of your car. You don't park it, first of all. You don't get out and you don't walk home, do you? And they said, well, no, that'd be stupid. I said, well, it's the same thing on this journey. It's the same thing on this journey. If you start looking at the roadblocks that you run into, the bumps that you run into, look at them as something that a traffic jam, and say to yourself, okay, I've hit a traffic jam. I'm not getting out of my car. I'm not parking it. I'm not walking home. What can I do? I can change the radio, or I can change up the foods that I'm eating. I can change up my exercise. I can, decide that maybe a day or two, I'm not going to worry about what I'm eating. I'm just going to eat. But there are things that you can do. And if we understand and we relate this journey to something that we really understand, like traffic, then it's easier for us to stay in our car, to accept, okay, you know what? I just hit a traffic jam. It's okay. Let me keep moving forward. Because when we quit is when we fail.
Yeah. There's a really good quote in your book about quitting and failing that I liked. I just read that not too long ago. But so in this story, you have you're describing this journey, going through all these obstacles like traffic jams and whatnot, and along the way you're recommending things for people to take along with them on their trip to support them in their travels. There's a lot of stuff in that suitcase. So this suitcase is one of those ones that you gotta like push down really hard and like zip it up. But of all the things that were in that suitcase, if you could only recommend 3 things, what 3 things would you deem as like kind of the most important out of all the resources that you have in that suitcase for people?
Now, don't laugh. I would say pens, highlighters, and something to write in. Those are the 3 things that I would recommend.
Okay, you're gonna have to explain that. Yeah.
Okay, the pen so that you can write, so that you can have that conversation with your very best friend in the whole wide world. And highlighters so that if you come across something that's really interesting that you want to try and remember, or a thought that you have that you've written in your own book that really sticks out that you want to really keep reminding yourself about, highlight it. So if I had 3 things, those are the 3 things that I would make sure that I had in abundance. And if you could see my desk, you would see I've got all kinds of containers filled with pens and highlighters because I don't want to run out of them. And I've got a stack of notebooks in the closet because I don't want to run out of those. So while every other thing in there is helpful to you, to me, having that conversation with your very best friend in the whole wide world is so critical. Because as I said, you can only control you. And even if you were to ask somebody to give you what it is that you want, need, and desire, they're going to disappoint you because they're not going to do it in the way that you want it.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful how you reinforce that writing, that journaling, because there was a lot of stuff in that suitcase, and for you to pick out those 3 items, that just shows that you really believe that is really an important, really valuable thing people can do on this journey of weight loss. And another thing that's good about that is that these things are free or cheap. Like, you can get a free notebook somewhere, you could get a pen from somewhere, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. You don't have to invest a lot of money in something like a notebook, and it can really, as you're saying, it can really shift the conversation. Basically, is what you're talking about. Yeah. So in the book, you talked a lot about, we talked about the feelings, but there's a couple other things that you talked about a lot in the book, and one was our why. Can you talk about the why?
Well, so many times when people decide that they're going to do something, they make a decision based on an event, another person, or a doctor telling them, or something like that. And we tend, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I can also speak for other people. If we're doing something for somebody else, they're going to make us mad at some point. They could make us mad at some point, or we're cramming upon the deadline of the event and we haven't gotten to our goal, so we start feeling like we've failed. Or, the doctor tells us, well, who in the heck is the doctor is to tell me that I need to do whatever it is the doctor tells me I need to do. So all of those things are external. Every single one of those things is external. It's relying on us wanting to make somebody else happy. Okay, let's go back to this. You can only control you. You're not in control of anybody else, right? The doctor can tell you based on the tests and all of that, which is information. His recommendation, her recommendation is that you do this. Okay, well, then you can make a decision. And what I came to recognize is my why, my reason for doing these things needed to be really, really internal, so that I was not being disappointed by somebody else, so that I wasn't feeling pressured by an event. I needed to be really clear so that on those bad days, and we do have bad days, let's face it, we all have a bad day, or we have an exciting day that's really over the top exciting. We have these days. I needed to have it so clear for myself that when one of those days that wasn't a normal day happened, I could remind myself, this is why you're doing this. So let's just keep moving forward. And in the book, and even in the workbook, I try and help people really dig down, and I say, figure out what your why is that has nothing to do with anyone else or your weight, not even your weight. And the reason I say your why should not, or don't make your why about your weight, is your weight fluctuates. It's like the gas gauge in your car. Is the gas gauge in your car always at the same level? No. It's not. Is the temperature in your house at the same level? No, it's not. Your weight fluctuates. My weight fluctuates. So if we tie it to those things, then we're setting ourselves up to be disappointed. My why was I wanted to be able to live my very best life. I intend to live to be 153 years old in one day. I just turned 65 a month and a half ago. I did not begin my weight loss journey, my new journey and all this stuff until I was 59. So for those people who are listening and say it's too late, I'm here to tell you it is not too late. It is never too late. I just knew that if I kept focused on, I want to live my best life for me, then when I had those days, those moments, then I could keep coming back to, I'm doing this so I can live my best life. And then I would pick up and I'd keep moving.
Any advice on how to find our why?
I break it down in the book, but let's just be really, really simple. Figure out where you want to be a year from now. Look at what you want to be doing, get pen and paper. I'm huge on pen and paper. Get pen and paper and sit down and imagine your ideal life a year from now. What are you going to be doing? What are you going to be thinking? What are you going to be wearing? Where are you going to be? What will you be, fill in all the blanks, flesh it out as much as you can. And then look at where you believe you're going to be in a year and say to yourself, now, how am I going to get there? And your why will show up in all that conversations. Because when we start envisioning our future self, then we know how we're going to get there. But not only that, we know why we're going to get there. It's just like you flew to Florida, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that you made the trip was not to get to Florida, because you obviously did not turn around and go back. It was what was going to happen afterwards. So when you're envisioning your life a year from now, then you start envisioning what your life is going to be 5 years from now and 10 years from now, and the life that you're going to be living. So your why is going to start showing up, and you'll see it really doesn't have anything to do with other people or your weight.
Yeah, it's I think, like you said in the book, and the point you were trying to make in there is just like that why is why you do it,
100%.
And it can't be a soft, like, little why. It has to be a big why that gets you moving and keeps you motivated and keeps some momentum going. Because if it's a little why, then it's easy for us to kind of sweep it under the carpet and say, oh well. But another thing in there that we talked a lot about, so we talked about a lot about our why and feelings, but specifically you talked a lot about loving ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what that means to you?
Well, loving myself means that I accept myself as I am right here in this moment, just as I am. And that was one of the things that I worked and struggled really hard with when I began speaking kindly to myself. Because one of the things that I started recognizing is how I spoke to myself. And this comes around to boundaries. We have two sets of boundaries. One boundary is with ourselves, the other boundary is with other people. What do boundaries have to do with any of this? Well, boundaries are very important because it establishes what we accept. And what I recognized is I accepted speaking badly to myself. I accepted thinking badly about myself. I accepted not having any encouraging thoughts towards myself. And so starting to love myself meant that I started reframing those thoughts. I started reframing the way that I spoke to myself. I would catch myself saying, how could you be so stupid? And I'd be like, wait a minute, hold on. Let's reframe that. Let's switch it around, and then let's try again. And now I've been doing it so long that I catch myself very quickly. I'm not saying that I don't have negative thoughts. I do, but I catch myself much more quickly than I used to, and I flip those things around. Because the way that we speak to ourselves, here's the big thing. We teach other people how to treat us, and the way that we do that is they observe how we treat ourselves. So if we are speaking to ourselves, treating ourselves badly, other people have been given permission, not blatant, obvious permission, but they are being given permission to do the same thing back to us. So if I wanted other people to love me, to treat me kindly, to speak to me kindly, to be respectful and all of that, I needed to start speaking kindly, respectfully, lovingly towards myself and believe that I deserved it. So I stopped looking to the outside for what I needed on the inside.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And I think if people can comprehend what you just said. I think that's going to be a really big, important point for some people. So your story is, I was drawn to your story because I watched some of your videos that you'd done before, some of your interviews, and I was drawn towards your story because I can just hear by the way you're talking that you experienced this, you've gone through it. And the reason why I'm drawn to that is because I know there's so many other people that are coming from a very similar situation that you're coming from. It might not be the exact same home environment or whatever, but it's a lot of people are coming from this very similar story around weight. And you were one of the ones that were able to figure out a way that worked for you to overcome it. So if I was like a person that was in your shoes where you were, because I also heard you say that if you knew how hard it was going to be before you started, you wouldn't have started, right? And so
100%.
Yeah. So if I was a person that was in your shoes, and I'm saying that I don't think I can do this. I've tried before. I can't do this. Like, what would your advice be for that person to get them moving in the right direction?
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is they get a notebook and a pen and they start having that conversation with their very best friend in the whole wide world. That's number one. Number two, I would suggest that they start envisioning, their life where they are a year from now and get clear on that why. But number three, reach out to me. You can go to my website, youcanteatlove.com, hit the contact me, email me, and tell me, look, I don't believe I can do it. And I will tell you, I talk to people. It's really me. It's not an assistant or anything. But I will say back to you, you are enough, just as you are right now. And those are my parting words at the end of the book. I believe that you are enough right now, just as you are, and I will believe it for you until you are able to believe it for yourself. So if somebody is really struggling, that's where I suggest that they start with a notebook, envision themselves a year from now, get that down in writing. And then I would suggest the next time they go to the grocery store, find a card that they really like, that they would enjoy receiving in the mail, and then go home, sit down, and write a letter to themselves in that card and tell themselves from their future self to their current self how proud they are of them, how amazing they are. Pour out all those accolades and affirmations and love that you would really like to hear. Pour it all out into that card, sign it with your name, put it in an envelope, and then put it someplace where you can pick it up and read it on occasion when you're feeling a little bit low. I now have probably 20 to 30 cards that I've done that. And I keep them all in different places. And when I'm struggling, and I do mean struggling, I will grab one of those cards and read it. Now, it sounds corny, and I've had people say, oh, that sounds so corny. Yes, it sounds corny, but it's very, very powerful, and it works. It works. There's so many things that I did that I was like, oh, this is never going to work. And it works.
And there's a lot of things in the book that they seem a little odd, and just the way you wrote them, it sounded like you thought they were odd at the same time. Like you were doing it, but you thought it was weird, but it wouldn't be in the book if it didn't work for you. So
100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good point too, is that, sometimes it's not always going to be the conventional way to accomplish something. It's not the way Jane did it, maybe, or Jody. It's the way you have to do it. And if the way you have to do it looks a little bit weird, so be it, right?
Well, and that's what you talk about all the time. It's not about the calories in and calories out and working out and all that kind of stuff. You are right there tackling the subject head on in saying, just because 90% of the world says you need to do it this way, doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, right?
Exactly. I'm glad you see it because it's like I was a personal trainer for a long time. If you might have heard on the podcast.
Yeah.
I was a personal trainer for a long time, and it was just I got to this point where I'd studied a lot around, especially around like holistic health, and the stuff we're talking about falls under that because holistic means everything. And I just knew that like the people I was working with, they needed more than this working out stuff. And the issue though for me was that when I brought some of this other stuff up, it was like a wall. Like they would shut down because we were talking about feelings or nutrition or it's something that wasn't related to just working out and burning calories. And it was like they just kind of glazed over and like I would lose them in a way. And so that's kind of why I stepped back from personal training and then focused more on like health coaching and more integrative work. But thanks for noticing that. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to get across is like there's so much more. And if you just start asking, well, what is this so much more that you keep talking about and start investigating that, people will get so much further in their weight loss journey than just trying to punish themselves by working out and starving themselves and on the food end of the situation.
Well, and then what happens is they get angry and they quit the working out and they continue to pay the gym fees, which makes the gym really, really happy. And they start, eating whatever the heck they want to eat, which makes the grocery store really, really happy. And the only person who is not happy is the person because they're like, nothing is working, right? Nothing. Yeah. I knew it wouldn't work. Of course, it isn't going to work. It's a failure. It doesn't work. Well, but here's a really crazy thing. I am a person who does not like to sweat. I can't stand sweating. I will not run. Don't ask me to run. I've tried it a million times. Tried the couch to 5K. Oh, you'll love it. No. I do not run. Won't do it. I started going to the gym 5 years ago. Now I enjoy going to the gym, but I will be really honest. The reason that I enjoy going to the gym now is because I enjoy how powerful I am. I mean, here I am, and I'm going to say to your listeners again, you are not too old, okay? When 2 years ago, I got my trainer, Jackie, who I reference in the book, I said, I would like to start deadlifting. She's like, okay, why not? Anyway, on my 65th birthday, I deadlifted 230 pounds 4 times. That was a personal best.
Nice.
230. Okay. Yeah. I can.
That's 2 plates.
Exactly. I can bench press 90 pounds.
Wow.
I can leg press 260 pounds.
Nice.
So the reason I go to the gym is because I enjoy how powerful I feel. I still hate going to the gym, but I love how powerful I feel. And as I say in the book, there are days when I'm going to the gym and the only thing I can say is I am a person who goes to the gym and that gets me through the door. Well, once you're through the door, that's half the battle, right? Wow. Yeah. So we have to meet ourselves where we are. Meet you where you are. If you're not doing anything right now, okay, let's do 2 minutes of walking. Meet you where you are. Don't try and go 30 minutes. People say, I walked 30 minutes and now I can't move. Well, of course you can't. And I talk about it in the book. I started out walking 5 minutes. I thought I was walking 20-something thousand steps. And these old people, they were in their 70s, these old people were walking 11,000 steps. And I knew I was doing much more, only to find out I was walking 2,000. Horrors, right? Meet you where you are, start where you are. Same thing with the food. Okay, don't put yourself, if you've been eating whatever the heck you want to eat, from Whataburger to McDonald's to Dunkin' Donuts and all that kind of stuff, and you decide you're going to clean up your eating, don't do it all in one day. Make a decision. You know what? I'm giving up McDonald's 3 times a week. and I'm going to make a different choice. Don't call it a healthier choice, please. Call it a different choice. Because when we start labeling things as being healthy and unhealthy, well, that sets off a whole nother thing. And you and I could do a whole nother podcast on that. But meet you where you are, because that is where you are. And where you are tomorrow is someplace different.
Exactly. And that's another point I try to get across on the podcast. And that's like a lot of people, this is one of the reasons why I'm turned off by exercise as well, is because people are sitting on the couch for 5 years and then they get guilty about being overweight, and they watch some motivational commercial or something, and they feel like they want to lose weight, and they go sign up for some crazy CrossFit workout or some Orange Theory or something, and then they get hurt, and they want, then they're one step forward, 2 steps back, and they got to start back at square one, but this time they're injured. And it's like, no wonder you can't get results, is because your plan is trash. like you got to start, like you said, you started off by walking 5 minutes. I mean, you have to ease into it, and don't try to get rid of this more is better mentality when it comes to this stuff, because people just get in this more is better. So I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to eat less, and then I'm going to lose a lot of weight. And then it almost always backfires on people.
Well, and the bad thing about it is the weight comes back with friends.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But the other thing about people deciding that they're going to go on some weight training program is they go in there, and this is where it's so important that you find a good trainer, somebody like yourself who is looking at the whole person, somebody who evaluates where that person is, and they start them out where they are, instead of having them lifting 20-pound barbells the first day and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, when I started working out with Jackie, I'd already been in the gym on and off for about a year and a half, but I still wasn't all that strong. So we started out with a lot of body weight stuff, and I struggled with body weight stuff. Then, you get to the 5-pound dumbbells, and I'm like, holy cow, this is terrible. This is awful. But you have to start where you are, and you need to make certain, and I talk about this in the book, find a trainer that's listening to you, that understands where you are and what your goals and objectives are. Because, there aren't that many Shawns or Jackies out there in the world. And if you want to really and truly live your very best life, it's imperative that you find a Shawn or a Jackie who is looking at all of you and not just trying to put money in their pocket doing a training session with you.
Or that's just trying to kill you.
Yeah, trying to kill you because they're not that informed as to what should be going on. Or do not jump off and do a program on your own where you decide the first day that you're going to do 100 lunges and 50 sit-ups and then 100 squats, and then the next day you can't sit down to go potty. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And I'm sure you've heard it too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and so then they say, I can't do it. Well, heck no, you can't.
Yeah, it's just like I said, I think it's just our mentality as a society is more is better. And so people get motivated, and they're like, I'm going to do this. And then they try to do as much as they can that first time. And it's like their body, that's not how it works.
No, not how it works at all. Not at all. And then they wonder why they can't.
Yeah.
And then we circle back around to, well, why did you start that in the first place? Were you simply trying to, because you paid, $5,000 for that gym membership? Were you trying to, just fulfill the gym membership, or did you for some crazy diet plan online? Why did you do it?
Yeah. And another thing that happens is people do these things like going too hard on the exercise, or doing some crazy diet that's way far from where they're at. And then they fail, like we've been talking about, And then it becomes a vicious cycle, because then they blame themselves and
Right.
shame themselves and think that there's something wrong with them. And then each time they try the same process, it happens again, and they start getting evidence that they don't know what they're doing. And they and so it's compounding, and they're getting more and more evidence that says, they were right, they're going to fail this time again. And that's just making it harder. You're digging those ruts that you were talking about in the book.
Yeah, you're going down that same muddy road and those same ruts that the car self-drives. But, here's the thing, and this is where it gets really important that we start acknowledging our true emotions. As you said, people will set themselves up to fail. And oftentimes what they're looking for is that hit from shame. Because when we feel shame, it's like getting a hit of endorphins. Our brain does not know the difference between good and bad. Okay, our brain just sees the hit. So when we believe that we are going to fail, we're already looking for that shame to come in and say, "See, I told you so," because we know how to deal with shame. We don't know how to deal with sad. We don't know how to deal with mad. Oftentimes we do know how to deal with mad. We don't know how to deal with happy. We don't know how to deal with all of those other emotions that make up us as a person. But shame, I say this all the time. I could do it with one hand tied behind my back and blindfolded. It was the other stuff that I struggled with.
You're an expert at the shame emotion.
Yes. And I can recognize shame, in other people. So oftentimes, we set ourselves up to fail because that voice in the back of our head is already going. That hamster is already on the wheel, and I'm on a one-person mission to fire all the hamsters and send them all back to the pet market and put the pet market out of business. But that hamster is already going. How long do you think you're going to do this? You know that in the time you've done it in the past, you failed. So how long is it going to take this time? We're just going to sit here and we're going to wait and we're going to watch. And we know you're going to fail. And that voice just gets louder and louder, which is why I go back to learning how to speak to yourself is difficult. Yes, it can be done. But you're driving down a muddy, muddy road. Your old ruts are right next to you. You have to go very, very slowly so you don't fall off in the ditch or fall back in the other ruts. Those ruts are going to be there for the rest of your life. So you just drive very slowly and be very kind to yourself. And when you get to the end of the road, you celebrate. And then you know that you can do it again.
Excellent advice. Well, Leslie, this has been a fantastic interview. Any parting words for the listeners, if you were to give any last minute advice to people that are on the same path that you were on?
I would say start out where I began, where I really started doing the hard work, which was with a notebook and a pen, and start getting really honest with yourself about your feelings. Don't run from them, just feel. And feel as long as you can feel. It may be a minute, it may be 30 seconds, it may be an hour, but feel as long as you can. And in the meantime, just remember, you are enough, just exactly as you are. And if you don't believe it, I will believe it for you until you can believe it for yourself.
All right, fantastic advice. I was going to ask you about that feeling thing, and how that can be hard, and how how can it take a long time to get over some of these ideas. But you just answered that question right there with just do it as long as you can, and then next time you'll do it a little bit longer, and eventually you'll be able to deal with these emotions, and doing the journaling can help with that process as well.
Yes.
All right, Leslie. Well, thanks for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Sean.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Leslie. I love Leslie's story because I know her story resonates with so many people trying to lose weight. Often during a weight loss journey, we can fall into an endless cycle of blaming others, feeling less than, partaking in sabotaging behavior, and not loving ourselves that weight loss seems impossible. Leslie is just another example of someone that found a way to lose weight that worked for her. In Leslie's case, finding her why, learning to love herself, journaling, and taking responsibility for her weight and, more importantly, her emotions, she was able to begin living her best life. What is one thing you can do now to move just a little bit closer to your best life? Just something to think about. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening. And remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.